Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Welcome here tonight at Pakhuis de Zwijger for the program The Art of Resistance with tonight's topic, the art of healing. Tonight has been organized by Afrispectives. For those who want to, please join them on or follow them on Instagram to also keep updated on future and upcoming events. Tonight we will explore together with me, Fazle, Charisse, and Kuda, um, the role of bodily awareness and the bodily experience in art, in which all the senses are combined. In a westernized art world, there has been major focus on the visual, fine arts, film, photography, sculpting, music have all been pillars of art that receive more attention than more attention and space than other art forms that engage in the other senses. Dance, of course, is an art form that relies heavily on the bodily experience. But through conversation and hopefully also together with you, all of you, we would like to explore that. We first want to start with Fazle. Yeah, the word to you.
Hello, welcome everyone. Very nice to see you here. Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna sit a little bit like this. So you found a little piece of paper and a pencil on your seat, and I would like to invite you to do a small writing ritual all together. And I will shortly introduce this writing ritual. It's a moment for us to arrive in our bodies, to set an intention by connecting with our ancestors. So I'd like to invite you to think about which ancestors you would like to write to. And it could be ancestors in your bloodline, of whom you know their names and their personal histories, but perhaps you also do not know their names and their personal histories for many reasons. So find a way for yourself then to still address them. Perhaps, for example, for myself, I connect strongly with a lineage of women who forcefully had to leave their children behind. I do not know their names, yet I would start my writing in that kind of way. You could also choose to even connect or make a writing in which you explain that you do not have a desire to connect with particular ancestors, which also could be for any reasons. Keeping in mind as well that our ancestors were human beings with their good practices, but also not always so great practices or even very awful practices. And in this writing, I would like to invite you to express an emotion or a feeling that you have in this very moment, or perhaps that you have already with you for a longer period of time. And in this space, you can also break with this linear conception of time. So perhaps you even want to talk about an emotion or a feeling that you are seeing for yourself in the future. So invite yourself to think also about time differently than just something from past, present to future, but breaking that altogether into something that's called cyclical time or infinite space and time. And you're also invited to ask a question or make a request to your ancestors, relating again to any notion of time, something that happened in the past, something that might happen in the future. And the last element which could help you in your writing is a promise or a sacrifice which you would like to make. And that could be something that is very material. So perhaps you want to donate money, for example, to a specific cause, or you would like to give up on a particular habit that you have that is non-material, but which you would like to give up on. This writing I call an act of materialization. After this ritual, you have a space also to create your own act of dematerialization, of letting go. Often I do this myself by burning the piece of paper, but maybe you find another way for yourself. Also to allow yourself to not hold on to that what you're writing, but allow it to transform or resonate it in any other way. So yes, you may please write for a few minutes and then I will come back to you. You may slowly finish your writing and may perhaps also accept that the writing is never finished. And when you're finished writing, you can maybe fold the paper, place it somewhere safe, inside of a pocket, inside of your bag. And then I would like to invite you to stand up and to close your eyes. Close your eyes and breathe. 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 Focus on the colors of your breathing, the movement of your breathing, the temperature of your breathing, the weight of your breathing. Where does your breathing travel? Where does your breathing move? Does it move in your throat, in your chest? Does it move all the way towards your belly, your hips, your knees, and perhaps all the way towards your toes? Observe your breathing without judgment. Now place your left hand on your heart and your right hand on your hara, your belly button, the space of your umbilical cord, the space where we all have been connected with our mothers, our ancestral lineage. Observe how your breathing changes with this touch, your touch, comforting, holding your body. Connecting with the moment of writing, those two hands which have just been writing to your ancestors. Visualizing how you place this intention inside of your heart and your hara. Visualizing how the warmth of your hand places two small fireballs, the size of a small seed, inside of your heart and your hara, holding that intention, holding the writing to your ancestors. Continue to hold this visualization inside of your body as you gently let go of your hands, resting next to your body. And as you gently open your eyes, to take place on your chairs.
Thank you very much. I have to really say thank you for this because it has changed the way I want to approach this night. So thank you. New energy, definitely. Yes, I haven't properly introduced myself yet when we opened, when I was opening the event. My name is Alona van Rosmalen. I'm an artist based in Rotterdam. I'm part of a blended family, mother of 3 kids. 2 of them are my stepchildren. And for the past few years in general, and I think this is perhaps for most parents as well here, trying to juggle motherhood, my art practice, and also knowing that, in the past few years we had Corona, so I had to do a lot of home studying with my kids as well. Yeah, this is Fazle. We did the practice with you just now. Maybe you first want to introduce yourself more properly. Maybe you want to say something more about the performance. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone, Art of Resistance, Afrispectives, for creating this space and bringing all these beautiful people together. We already had a very lovely, or had many lovely conversations before. Yeah, so my name is Fazle Sairmahomed. I was born and raised in The Hague, in a neighborhood called Transvaal, next to the neighborhood Schilderswijk, which I'm very proud of. And yeah, I think what basically keeps me busy in life or gets me inspired in life is these types of conversations, but also really inviting myself and others more and deeply into the body and connecting that with ancestral work, questioning also these notions of ancestry, expanding beyond notions of only blood lineage. Myself growing up in the neighborhood I just mentioned means that I grew up in a very multicultural hybrid environment. And this is also how I would identify myself as someone who is very hybrid, informed by many different cultures, coming from very painful histories in which many of my ancestors have been very resilient and in that journey as well have found many others in many different ways of healing practices, but also surviving, literally just surviving. And I think within this reality of surviving, my practice also holds trying to transform that into something that also moves beyond surviving. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit more later. Yeah. So that's a short introduction about myself.
Yeah. Charisse,
Yes.
please.
My name is Charisse, and I graduated in 2016 in the School of Arts as a dancer and choreographer. And I guess after my education, I was longing for more or diving deeper in energy and how to approach dance from a different way or not the way I learned it in school, maybe. So I was searching and longing for connecting to my body on a deeper level and how to heal the body with dance, with movement, with energy, which I researched a lot the last years. So next to that, I'm a shaman, giving a lot of healing sessions, and I'm combining the more energy work with the dance for dancers and non-dancers. And I guess what inspires me is that the body knows it all and also shows it all. And that the power is really within, although we sometimes tend to go outside and want everyone else or anyone else to fix us.
Thank you very much. And then the last of us, Kuda.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. How's everybody doing? Everyone good? Okay. Yeah, so my name is Kuda Nemane. I was born here in Amsterdam. I am from Zimbabwean roots and Dutch as well, and some Malawian in there as well. I've always been into sports and as a kid playing outside, but then later on it got more serious until the point where I was 18 and I started um, studying under the stepdad of my best friend, and he was a martial artist and a yoga practitioner, amongst other things. And I actually quit high school because I felt like this was my calling. And since then, this is the path that I'm still on. I now give massages. I am a yoga teacher. I sometimes also give workouts, which are my more of a combination of martial arts and yoga together. And yeah, I give workshops sometimes. I love what he did over there. He's an amazing performer. That was to me more like almost a journey and experience. It was amazing. Um, so I like to learn from others as well. I'll try and do this in my yoga class soon. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, like I said before, we get into a room and there's a certain intention that you have, and it kind of changed after the exercise that we did in a really positive note. Um, I yeah, that it when we think about the art of healing, or the the topic why we are here, it really starts with, what does bodily awareness means to us. There are many ways to approach the practices that we have, but to really focus, to go towards the healing, it's really nice to start with our body. For me, for example, when I think about bodily awareness in my practice, first of all, it's always a little bit awkward for me, I think, when people ask me, what art do you make? It's a never-ending question that kind of haunts me in the practice that I'm in, and perhaps maybe that's also for you guys, because it's really hard to give a one specific answer to that. Because on the one hand, art is something really personal to me. Last time I also proclaimed loudly, like, no, art is a really selfish thing for me. It's really about me. It's all about me. Even though for a long time I wanted to use it for, for good, to make social change, or to be part of a social change, to move conversations forward, etc. But in the past few years, especially through my kids, becoming a mother, many things when I were younger, my body, there were things that I took for granted. I was young, I was fit. And then when I became pregnant, especially after giving birth, it's a confrontation to feel like, oh, certain body parts are not working properly in the way that I was used to so much. And then my art practice really became a way for me to really navigate the personal struggles. I think when I was younger, it was already serving me in that way, through, escaping into the fantasy. But as I grew older, a little bit wiser, also a little bit more critical towards myself, but also to, the world that we live in, it also became a way to express myself in ways that I wasn't really, or I didn't know how to. I think art was an exciting medium for me because I saw stories told in a way that were either really familiar or really intriguing, to know that they were told in a certain way. It was really sometimes uplifting, empowering, etc. But in the past few years, it's been really personal. So it's really hard to then try to tell people what is my work, what do I make. One of the things that you maybe, for example, see right now on the screen is a project that I've worked on in the past year. It's about motherhood. And again, it's a really personal story. And I started, as a mother, or as an artist who becomes a mother, uh, often there was an assumption that perhaps now I might use my kids, for example, in my artwork. I would incorporate them as part of it. But it's more like an identity crisis for me, to be a mother, because I was working so hard on my individuality. Who am I? This is who I am. This is who I want to show the world. But then having a kid really kind of like, what? I didn't, I wasn't, becoming a mother became spontaneously. It's not something that I was waiting for to happen, for example. So bodily awareness for me is really like tuning in, like, where am I now? How am I doing? Why does my back hurts the way it does? Why do I feel I cannot enter a space? Why do I feel anxiety rising up? Why am I ventilating? Stuff like that. And also, mental health. Where am I? Where's my mind? And this is something that I am, practicing within my work, which I cannot show to others, which I do not post online, which I cannot really, but it's something that is personal to me, and I do see that it works within, the realm of art, so to speak. That's how I would describe it. But then of course I look to the three of you who do, you guys are, your practice is about, your body, and it's really intriguing. But still, I do want to know, what does bodily awareness, means to you guys?
I will go. Um, I think it's connecting to my body, and with that being able to also connect to the people around me and the people I know and don't know. As I feel like when I am connected and when I understand where I am in that moment, I am able to listen to myself, to understand myself, and therefore also I am able to be vulnerable and to really connect with also the other person. So for me, bodily awareness is really about tuning in as well, connecting, and listening. Yeah.
Nice. Um, yeah, bodily awareness. Um, I give massages already now for a while, and oftentimes I see myself. I mean, I'm a massage therapist, but I actually help people become aware of their own bodies. And the way that I found that it works is that, especially when you are people come to me and they have pain in certain areas, and usually when we have pain, we want to go away from it, right? But when we want to heal something, then we need to actually stick with it a little bit and look at it and clean the wounds that you might have, so that they can later on feel better. But for that, you need to get into a state where, yeah, you really have to feel what's going on there and dare to ease into your body, breathe into it slowly, and then from there, through the awareness of what's actually going on in your body, the release instantly takes place. So let's say, oh, we're sitting here in the room, and I tell you, oh, try to be aware of your shoulders, and all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I was not aware that they are tense. And this is a very easy example that we all know, I think. Um, and this can go a lot deeper. You can take that all the way into, well, other body parts, just like we just did now, into the heart and the hara, and um, but it can also be like in a daily basis where you're just standing at the cashier at the, I don't know, at the supermarket, and all of a sudden you realize you're too stressed, and you're like, oh yeah, I can take a breath, I can be aware, and then flow on easier. And I think that's how you can take bodily awareness and use it in daily life. Practice it in a specific time, get better at it, and then in daily life you will have a tool that you practice that you can then call upon. Yeah.
Of course, all of this resonates with me. I feel that we are speaking the same language. I like that. Yeah, the way I would give words to the same thing that you are all saying, I think, is for me deep listening to the body. And maybe perhaps in this reality, I think so many people talk about being tensed and having tensions, and it's a language that I also use then to actually go into the body, because I think that I mean, I want to invite people to think about tensions as something that's very layered, but also something that is not really only bad, right? It's information. That's why it's deep listening. Where in our bodies do we hold tensions, but also how did it arrive to us in the very moment because of a very particular situation? Do you hold tension from someone else in your body, or do you hold this tension already for a longer period of time in your body? But perhaps also you're holding tension inside of your body that moves beyond your physical existence, right? Ancestral pain, ancestral tension. But this journey of trying to understand where and how these tensions come about or how they even shift in our bodies can be activated in many different ways. And one of these ways for me, I think, in my practice is that I am fascinated, I would say, by what in very restrictive terms I would formulate as a state of trance, right? And in my practice, I'm very much informed or inspired by several traditions, several spiritual traditions, Sufi traditions such as Zar and Gnawa, whirling as well, really altering a state where you invite your body into a different dimension in which you also can allow yourself to understand your body as something that is really part of something bigger, something larger, something that expands through time and space, and thus is connected with everyone and everyone else. Um, and in these different dimensions, or in these kind of different states where we arrive by dancing, I think we are all experiencing it. By the way, I mean I have a particular practice that or practices that I'm inspired by, but I think we are all experiencing. For example, when you're in a club or when you're dancing and you have this certain kind of feeling, we never have just one state of being throughout our day or in our lives. But then how to actively use it, to intentionally use it, to tap into a space of transformative healing, I think is what for me is bodily awareness is for a very big part about. And I want to already connect one concept there. What I'm fascinated about are the spaces in between. So there is for me a spirit in between our bodies, but there is a different spirit existing in between your bodies. And one of the ways for me to describe it maybe even more easily is weed. Weed consumption. I love smoking weed. I know a lot of us love smoking weed, but the way in which weed manifests inside of our bodies is different for all of us. That shows to me, or is an example of how that spirit of between you and that specific weed is different for someone else. Um, yeah, and tapping into that, acknowledging constantly the spaces in between, spirits in between us, beings, objects, plants. Um, that is for me where a bodily awareness starts becoming transformative. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is really beautiful. And what you, what kind of, what I'm thinking right now is that with what we have talked about, uh, especially where you take your inspiration from, this element of spirituality. Yeah, the the uh, yeah, I lost my word. I think maybe somebody wants, what does it, listening to him? Do you maybe know
I'm
it? Or
learning a
yeah,
lot as I'm
yeah,
listening to
yeah.
him, so I'm just taking it in. Um, I think even when I feel him speaking, or when we did the exercise just now, I feel a very strong presence when you speak and when you yeah, the way you observe things, and I think that's very intricate how you are looking deep into, okay, what do these energies really mean, and you're talking about trance. That's also very interesting to me. I never consciously stepped into that state. um, but you say that you experience a specific type of awareness when you're in that state, and how then do you think you can use that, or to heal, for instance? How can you use that to heal?
Yeah, big question. One of the most important things in that space is that I can allow myself actually to not be in the world of words. And that's maybe one of the first things. I think it's beautiful, the world of words, making things tangible. But I also think that this reality in which we live now, words are very dominant, are very, very dominant. And I don't think that it's always healthy for this transformative healing processes. I think I want to invite ourselves into, oh, I see this beautiful image, a trailer of a work that we made. And that's definitely connected with the kind of movement practice I do. Yeah, where you can allow yourself, for example, the words that we just wrote, the moment when you start dancing with that as an intention, it will transform into a space that is not in words anymore. But then when you come out of it, you find yourself in another space, in another reality. Maybe you feel perhaps relieved, but maybe you also feel even more tensed. Um, and I don't know, I don't even actually have a clear answer, to be really honest. I think it's constant discovery, and I think that's also what this journey of the body is about. That it constantly invites you into an infinite journey of understanding the world differently. And by going out of this very fixed, rigid, everyday reality, you also allow yourself to be placed into perspective, like not as someone that's insignificant, but as something, and like the worries that we have and the pains that we experience and the depressions that we go through and the hardships, and but also even the joy that is very relative. But I'm curious also, of course, yeah, to hear from you about indeed this question, body and spirituality. I know we all have an idea about this. What is that? What does that mean? What is spirituality in, yeah, embodied practices for you?
I just want to connect on what you just shared. I think if I connect all what you just shared with how I experienced it and how I see it, then having all these white spaces or like the in between spaces is also a way of allowing ourselves to go, or at least for me, allowing myself to go into this trance state. And when I'm there, it's actually a relief because there is like you are more in your subconscious mind, meaning that we don't need to know the how and we don't need to have all the answers, which means that actually body can just do its work. And therefore we will get the answers, but maybe not on the questions we want to know, right? So I feel like going into this trance state allows me at least to release tension or find joy or whatever, experience freedom or whatever, all that's there, without needing to know the answer, but just allowing my body to experience and therefore also heal itself. Because I feel like we're really, mostly we're really, we really want to know the how and the why, and this can be very good questions and it's not bad, and I also do that, so there's no judgment at all. But sometimes we're so focused on the how and the why, and that's we get stuck in this loop on like wanting to know the answers, and sometimes it's just the body that needs to speak and allow ourselves to channel the movement, and this can be movement as dance, but this can also be movement as breath or just, I don't know, tears, like everything is movement. So I feel like it's the spaces in between and just giving yourself in that emotion or the space or the movement will give you the answers. This was my thought.
And I love to see your movement. I'm now like, oh yes, exactly, yeah, yeah. Sorry for your chairs, but yeah, we got the good chairs. So-
What I find so intriguing about your guys' work or the practices that you have, because I feel that in general, if I don't seek it, the only exercise that I will have in my life are either the walks that I go to school when I bring my kids, or when I have to go on a bike. And I do feel in general the pressure of, I want to be fit, I want to work on my body, not to just look fit, but because I feel like I want to be more confident in feeling stronger. It's like you don't feel confident if you wake up and there's already a backache and you're like, oh, You feel the load of, carrying yourself. So it's about, I want to be fit in that way, that I feel confident and strong. But then we live in the society that has so much, we need this, we need that. And especially with having my kids, I feel like I'm in a state of life where I'm just on the highway, just things go by so quickly. So how, and this is maybe a general thing for many people that, do not have a life that is already based in a practice that, ask you, your work is your passion, let's say. Then, what are your advices for me, for those who, it's not easy to go to a moment of peace? Or, I forget myself so quickly.
Yeah, I think that's the society that we live in today. I think there's plenty of people who experience that in this room right now, isn't it? Okay, so and even me as a practitioner of this craft, I sometimes catch myself moving less than I would like to. Um, I think, let's say, it's too much to go to a yoga class or to you simply don't have time, or you don't see where you have the time. I think to have little moments, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, where you are with yourself, connecting with yourself, breathing, and from there moving, even though if it's just a simple stretch where you go forward like this, it's not so much about the movement itself. Sometimes it can be that your specific parts in your body need attention, but it's more about how you engage within the movement that you're doing. How are you aware energetically? And also mentally, actually the mind is very much connected to this to the energy world. They are it's the bridge between the energy world and the physical world. So once we feel stuck or we feel pain in a specific place, we can start to feel it's not just bodily awareness, it's also mental awareness, and which goes into the nervous system, and it's your whole being, and you have your energetic spiritual self as well. That's even more. But if you can start with the body and with the breath and just relaxing that, that's already a great gift. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to go to the highest peak in the Himalayas to learn certain yoga practices or go to expensive classes or whatever. It can really be as simple as what we just did: standing, closing your eyes, breathing. And of course, it's nice if somebody else guides you through it, because then you don't have to think about it. But once you get into a little bit of a routine, even if you're in the park or you're sitting down and you're like, my back hurts, and you just do a little stretch. If you get, just Google and find on something on YouTube which can work, but then the embodiment of the exercise is the most important thing. And it's also the most difficult one, but it's the one that pays off the most, I feel. Yeah.
And I think, um, like there's this, we often think that we don't have time. And if we look at our days, that might be so. But actually, so I'm someone, I have a morning practice and I like to do it for 2 hours. I don't have kids. But I do have things to do, right? So I still have my things to do. And I can say to myself, I don't have time for this, and it takes too long, and la 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 la, and I want to sleep more. But actually, there's like a huge difference when I don't do it and when I do it. And when I do invest in myself, and it doesn't have to be 2 hours, it can be like 10 minutes, like really, it can be 10 minutes, in which you, I don't know, 5 minutes movement, 3 minutes breaths, 1 minute meditation, or whatever you want to do. But if you just take those 10 minutes every day, you have like this daily check-in moments, you will see that your life or like your energy will flow in a different way, and it actually will generate more time. Or at least what I experience and what I also experience with clients is, once from the moment you start investing in yourself, and again, it can be just 10 minutes, your energy will start flowing differently through your body and also your energy field. And this means things will go easy. Like you attract more things, and it's like sending out and then you will receive it, right? So it's this giving and receiving, and it starts within. And although there's like this, we don't have time and we're all busy, there is time. And we all have 10 minutes. We also watch Netflix and we also watch television, and we have time to text. And so just invest 10 minutes in yourself, and then if you want, you can expand.
It's almost like you get in the car, you want to go somewhere, but the window shield is dirty. But you have to go there, so you go quick. But if you take just a little bit more and you clean it off, you'll realize the journey itself will be easier. And actually, it seems like you have more time, but yeah.
And maybe at some point you're like, those 10 minutes are actually not enough, and then you will go to the 2 hours.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then it becomes 15 minutes, and then 20, and then 30, and before you know it, your kids are like, when is dinner, you know?
Yeah.
They come to join you. They come to sit and meditate next to you.
Exactly. Or in the meantime, they learn cooking themselves. So that's also great. You know?
Work on
But
yourself,
yes,
like how I work on myself.
But what they're saying totally, of course, resonates with me. I think what is also important, because I found it interesting how you narrated this, right? This feeling of waking up in the morning and then having this pain. I think first of all, don't be judgmental about it, right? It's like you wake up, and if you wake up every morning with, oh shit, I feel like shit again, and like, why is it like that? Is it ever going to stop? Like, this is this mental mindset that you have. It's like, okay, I'm feeling like this. Maybe I can try to understand, is of course doing the like it's in the small gestures, but also like trying to understand where this comes from. And you already described very much where it comes from, right? So what can we do also in our everyday life habits that we already have, that we know that are actually unhealthy? For example, I don't know, listening to a boss that complains all day long. I don't know, maybe you can start setting boundaries there. Already gives you a little bit less tension to wake up with the next day, you know? It's also these kind of gestures. So practice, yes, and building it into from a small practice maybe into something that becomes more regular or starts becoming a healthy pattern. Um, but also trying to transform other facets of your life which cause actually that tension, because you can do every day 1 hour yoga practice, but if you continue to be in that toxic relationship, honey, I mean, that yoga practice is just going to do only so much for you, you know. So let's be real.
That's true. That's true. I think to give an example of this, I can for myself. So I've been an artist. I've been trying to work as an artist. Started having part-time job at first. Last year, I had the chance to do a fellowship with Boymans in Rotterdam to do an artistic research on art and motherhood. And for me, this, it's kind of like, oh, an art and motherhood, but the reason why why I was able to do the fellowship was because I started to complain. I started with a complaint, saying that, I hear that you wanted to have more artists or murals made by artists of women of color, or at least more people of color. So of the 4 murals that were made eventually in the building, I was the last one. The first 3 were made by 3 white male, which is okay in general. What I mean is more like my project on itself was okay, but I was at least triggered to have a discussion like, oh, you wanted to have something changed, but why this? And one thing led to another, and then eventually I was able to do this fellowship because I felt like, as a mother, I already kind of feel like things go by quickly, and it's kind of hard to reach or to go with the same speed or in the same direction as my male colleagues. And now that I was able to finally do the fellowship, it was a good opportunity for me. But what I found out after a year is that I was not happy at all. I was not happy at all with myself, with my works. I was really judgmental of everything that I delivered, and I kind of understood that it doesn't matter how much I complain about either the institute or either things are not fair, but I felt that as long as I stay myself in this in this space, I've tried for many, like 5 6 years already. During school I was busy, and it's like this is not anymore for me the space to flourish, especially as an artist. And I recently, for example, made the change to go into an orientation to become a primary school teacher. And at first, it was like a step down. Like, is this me giving up? Maybe, like, because there's a certain anxiety that comes up when you go into another, in a change of a phase. But then I actually felt that because certain things were changing, there was an instant release of a certain tension. And with this, I felt instantly more inspired again. I had more dreams again. I had more general ideas again. And I was even looking forward to the future in a way that I wasn't even aware that I was not looking anymore at my own future. So I actually do really agree with what you say. There is, we already feel a general pressure of there are many things that we need to do. We need to be accomplished mothers, wives, girlfriends, best friends, etc., etc. But then we need to make sure that in order to be the best versions of ourselves, is the environment providing us to flourish in that way. And right now you see an example of one of my works that I did. Actually, this is not really connected with with the story that I told, but I do want to say that it is a story about transformation. And for me, this was, also why I love art in general, that art gives me a way to tell stories, to tell my own personal stories that I didn't know otherwise how to share them. It's not something like, hey, dad, or hey, mom, or hey, friends, or, it's just, and sometimes it's just an expression. I want to express something without really saying too much. And yeah, this is also, the whole the project here. It was Holy Mestiza. And I don't know, for those who don't know what a mestiza means in the Tagalog language, which I'm half Filipino. It's basically somebody that has, Western roots, who is a mixed person. And for me, at this point, it became so traumatic to be a mestiza, because, when you're here, I'm just, just an allochtoon, just a person of color. And then when I always fantasize of going to the Philippines, or when I was in the Philippines when I was younger, I always, felt I was a Filipino. Like in my soul, I felt it. But then I come there, and of course, it's just mestiza. And, there are many bad experience that happened to me for being a mestiza. But then there is also, religion and culture that plays part in what forms me. Nakedness, giving this kind of performance, it's something that I would not have dared to if it was not within the realm of art. My body has always been kind of like a presence where I kind of think about my artwork. It's either trying to tell my story through myself, or trying to use something else to tell my story. And yeah, I'm blabbering a little bit. I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe somebody wants to chip in.
Is there maybe a question from the
Oh.
crowd? No one? Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm kind of curious to hear from any of y'all what you could, I guess, foresee the benefits of teaching these sort of embodied practices of creating a personal narrative for like young people, children, and like even older people. So like throughout different stages of life, learning how to, I guess, embody or learn embodied movements, embodied creative arts for healing purposes. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. So how would you kind of implement these sorts of practices in a community, for example, at like different stages of life for different peoples? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, like, what advice would have for maybe a community, for the children, or for all older people, or how we actually do that in daily life?
Either or like any ideas for like a community practice.
Mm. Well, that's a big question, actually, I think. Um, and if you have a quick answer,
Not a quick answer.
mean,
but
yeah.
I will try to keep it short because community is a very important aspect in the work that I do, and different stages for me is then I think more connected with the needs of particular communities. I definitely believe in. I come from a space that is very hybrid, so of course I stand for that, but I also very much value a sense of creating more safer spaces, and I also definitely believe in this concept of peers learning together and exchanging. So in those spaces where I transfer knowledge, um, one of my main concerns is as well to create a space where we exchange. So I have a particular approach to the world, to my body, but what is the approach of the other in that process? So even when I mean, actually, at this point, I am for several reasons not teaching on a regular basis. I only uh, teach in a production, which I got funding for, so then I get paid. And then I can also even pay the people that I invite to work with me in that process. At the moment, I'm busy with a project mostly focused on these questions of community, healing, and plants, or the spiritual power of plants. And I've invited about 40 to 70 people actually into the studio. We're different sessions where we're working together and exploring these questions, really having conversations with each other. And another form where I, of course, also share is when I get invited into a space. But when I get invited into a space, there's already as well a kind of they have created a certain base of from where to gather people that create together a safer space. This is a mode of working for me that aligns best with my energy. Of course, there are many different ways of teaching and practicing, but I am trying to be very careful with this notion or idea that I am coming to just give. I think I want to live more in a world where we are becoming more aware of what is the reciprocal relationship that we have. I give, but what do you give back? I mean, you give me something back, but are you aware of you giving me something back? Yeah, so I think that's how I approach this question.
I think on a dance base, I approach it the same. I work with funding and then I can pay my dancers, etc., etc. And in a more surfing community way, I also worked a lot with children and teenagers with difficult backgrounds. And I think what is the most important, I'm not sure if I'm really answering a question, but I think what's the most important is creating this safe space. And then actually there's not really a need of changing what I do somehow. So for me, what I do, or like when I guide like workshops and masterclasses, it's the same when I do it for adults as for teenagers or for children, because as long as you can create a safe space, the people that are in your space, in your workshop, they're open. And when they're open, I don't want to say you can make them do anything, but they are willing to try and to experience. And I was really in shock almost, because I had a group of kids. They were between 6 and 16, which is already like a huge group. They all had like, or age difference. They all had like difficult background situations or home situations. And I also always end the workshop with eye gazing, which is like looking in each other's eyes for 3 minutes. And it was so beautiful to see because they actually realized there was like this little 6-year-old girl, and she was like, it's actually very scary to look in someone's eyes, and but it's I saw the other person, and I almost needed to cry, and I was like, this is also what I get when I do it with adults, but it's the same for a 6-year-old. So it's sometimes we try to create like these different approaches to different types of people or ages, but actually we're all the same, and it really doesn't matter how old we are or which background we have, as long as we have this open approach and this safe space. It's all possible, I feel.
I think I can also make it like a full circle with the question that was asked, and that is that, when we started your exercise, I from what I remember, I wrote down, who are you? What did you go through? Can you please help me, guide me through the universe, give me signs? And then what I wrote down to let go was, I want to let go this need of control to feel safe and secure. So it's kind of like to give to answer your question. On the one hand, is like giving you new tools, or giving, even myself, the advice that I gave, that people have given me, were like certain practical tools, like start your morning routine like this, or just make sure to get up and be there, but then I also kind of recognize, I need to really let go what you said, the judgment that I have, the fact that I already failed with something just by waking up. And looking now back, I'm 31, I do feel that, instead of just saying, oh, let's create a safe space, to that if there was a safe space to really name things like, you're allowed to be sad, you're allowed to laugh, you're allowed to fail, you're allowed to show everything, show that you wish you don't, the things that you wish to not show, and to really, specify what does it mean a safe space. For others it's the physical, safety. For others it's the idea of that whatever I say will not be judged. Yeah, so there are things that we can do: create a safe space, and then also tune in with yourself. Like, what do I need? It's always nice if you're able to help others with the skills and the experience that you have. But I also try to tune in now to know that there sometimes it's not just that. Sometimes it's things like, oh, but you're already doing so good, you're here, and welcome, and thank you, and oh, you inspired me, and to let also just even voicing myself, when something is inspiring, to just say that and not be like, oh, somebody is inspiring me, but I'm just too shy, or I'm ashamed. Maybe this person isn't waiting for my compliment. There are just many small details, and when I think about when you said gray areas, you were mentioning the gray areas, the souls between two persons, for example. But I'm also always thinking about gray areas, the things that we do not say, the things that we wish to say, the things that maybe should have been said, but what should then have been said. That's something that is also really what intrigues me personally, and also in my art practice.
Yeah, I like that. Um, I think that is also a very important part when it comes to healing and the body, because we we tend to think that you might need to do these exercises and then your body will be fine, but oftentimes the roots of the pains that we have, or the aches that we feel physically, are deeper rooted in maybe some insecurities that we have, or trauma that has happened in the past, or even behaviors that you do on a daily basis that are not bringing your body into balance. So becoming aware of those and daring to look yourself into the mirror and confront yourself about with these things softly in a safe space, but to actually look at them, I think that also helps to relieve ourselves from these physical pains. Yeah, it's not just the work that you do in the gym or in the mat or exercises, but also the emotional work that you do with yourself, with your friends, with your family, and in that way, healing becomes more of a lifestyle. Understanding that you need to bring a change in your lifestyle. Um, yeah, and when it comes to community, I think that's an amazing thing. But also a big challenge. I myself, for instance, I've worked together with an app that built gave yoga exercises to children for schools on schools. It's called the Super Chill app, and you can all download it and give it to your nephews, and they can do yoga with me online. But then I also see that the company which is sponsoring them doesn't see rapid enough growth, and they want to see numbers. And the people who are part of setting up the app, they had a specific idea and an image that they want to portray through it. But then the investors, they want to see different results. So it's also still a challenge how we can implement that into society and how we can all. I think the first initial step is that we take our own responsibility. Otherwise, yeah, we can ask to governments or to other entities to arrange events that make us more conscious and aware. But if we take it into our own hands, firstly within the household or maybe at school, a program or a suggestion of doing the app or whatever suggestions you have, like try to do it within your own communities because yeah, it's not set up yet at school. At schools, it's not done yet. Hopefully, it will be in the future. I've seen things in England where they teach they don't give them they don't give them punishment after class, but they give them meditation after class. You know, and just a few schools. But then these kids, they come home and they tell their parents like, "Oh, I think you need to breathe for a moment," and they start to make them more aware. So it can come from the younger generations up. It can also come from up to down. It has to be there, and I think we need to take it there. So things like this is I think it's great. Did that answer your question, Lil? Yes. Okay, cool.
Are there other questions in the
Over there.
maybe?
Hi, thank you very much. My question is, we talk about negative things, energy is a bit low, so I'm trying to get the energy high. Could you answer my question about when was the moment that you applied the method of healing that you remember that it had a positive effect? When was the moment?
Anyone?
Yeah, go.
Okay, well, I have to think.
Yeah. Also, just to clarify the question, you mean the first time moment or just the last moment or any? Yeah.
Mm.
Go.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I'm still thinking.
All the time, all the
Okay.
time, honey. Yes, it's happening every day. I mean, I guess I also have like similar, like what you were describing, many different practices. I think I have about 3 practices in a day that I need to do. I'm always like, honey, I don't have time for your nonsense. I'm just busy with like moving, dancing, meditating, healing. So don't disturb me. But that's not always true, of course. I also get disturbed by the reality around us. No, but it's happening all the time, and I think again, what is very important for me is to not try to measure it. I don't have to feel like, okay, today was better than yesterday, or it was worse than yesterday, or now this afternoon I'm feeling worse than this morning. Doesn't mean that I won't observe that, but it won't be my way to evaluate or reflect upon who I actually am. You know, I think what I love to feel in my everyday is that there's constant transformation and shifts of my energy, and also in the spaces around me. It's easy, really. I'm saying this also because it's very easy in this world to sometimes really hold on very rigidly to certain ideas. And when we're also just talking about this conversation and the hearing the things that have just been said, it's really about constantly tapping into creative energy, seeing life as a constant research, as a constant exploration. Oh, what am I gonna discover today? Not like, oh, I have to affirm today again that I am that person that I believe that I am and I should be or I want to be. Like, that gets boring after a certain point in life, I guess, for many of us. Also, very exhausting. Um, so, yeah, this research, exploration, tapping into creative energy, creating together, and that's also one of the things that I really do actively in my workshop. Of course, when I said exchange, I'm not expecting someone to give a whole movement research practice to me, but one of the ways that I do it is I invite the senses in actively into my practice, and that also means going beyond the five senses. Maybe you have already understood that because I speak about spirits and other dimensions, but it means that I would, for example, in my workshops, invite people to create their own altars that invite the senses in, and which you connect with a specific intention. When you bring people together in a space and have, I give homework always to people before they come into the space. That's a very important thing for me. I like, you can't come just to the workshop and just do nothing. It doesn't mean that I will get angry or something when people come and didn't prepare anything. It's about the fact that you had to think about something and maybe you realized, oh, I didn't manage. But what happens when you come together in that space is again exchanging and transforming. You had a certain idea that you were going to use this rose water in a particular way, but the moment that you come together in a space, you are allowing it to transform, or at least I'm also creating that space that allows it to transform. So constantly tapping into creative energy, um, and not holding on rigidly to one understanding of myself. That's why I'm saying all day, every day, fine.
Yeah. I like the question. I had really had to think about it, and even now I can't really remember. For instance, when I turned about 18, I quit high school and I started going to classes 5 days in the week. So I was still going to school, but I was receiving other trainings. And we would do yoga practices and martial arts and kickboxing and boxing and stretches and running and all of that. But it is not, it wasn't really at that beginning moment that I thought like, oh yeah, I really feel the benefits of this. It was more so actually the community that I was invited into and the joy of training together and going through hard things together. Because yeah, the trainings were actually quite hard and sometimes painful and uncomfortable. So only after a while I started to notice, oh, one day I remember we were moving, helping our trainer move stuff from one house to another, and I was putting something in the car, and I stepped like a big step into the car, and he's like, "Oh, you got more flexible," and I saw myself standing there in almost like a split. I was like, "Yeah, actually, I did." So those are the moments that I really notice it at first, and still today, there's moments when I feel like, oh, um, I might not feel so good, and then I do my practice, and I feel better, and I'm happy about the fact that I gave that to myself. Or I once had I give massages, but I don't receive so many. But that's why I remember the few that I had. So there was once a massage I got from a guy, and I received the treatment. It was a Thai massage treatment. I don't know if any of you know what Thai massage is, but it's basically you are doing yoga without you having to do it. Yeah, they call it yoga for lazy people. So I was being stretched all directions, and I was like, okay, this is nice. Then we took a walk to the park, and we spiritual people like to dance in the woods, so that's what we did. we were dancing in the woods, and all of a sudden, I felt like, whoa, my leg can really kick high, man. So those are moments where I really felt the benefit and power of the work that I do. So, yeah.
For me, a really small thing that I do, and like I come here as an artist, there are works that I can show on the TV, but the thing that I still do, and last Tuesday we our WhatsApp group celebrated our 7th anniversary year because we're still going that strong, and it's going outside after I brought my kids to school. I start my audio and I just make this amazing small podcast for my subscribers in the WhatsApp group. Shout out to Fart School. That's the name of our group because it started in when we were in school, and it's like, hey, good morning, how are you guys, blah blah blah, I've been thinking about this lately. And for a half hour long monologue, my friends wake up, react like, hey, how's up, and it's this, I don't know. It's something that I do without thinking, but it's that one practice that gives me so much joy to make small, personal, mini podcasts for my friends, and they keep me updated with their things. And it was easier when we were in school because we see each other, we work together. But now our lives are more separated, and it's like we're our biggest fans, and it's like, hey, what's up? And then we get this personal message, and we listen. I listen to my friends for half an hour, even though we do not talk in that moment. It's like that's my community. That is gives me joy, and either through sad and good times. So, yeah.
I would also say on a daily basis, and not, or yeah, not that always working out, but I think there was like this moment, and I can't grab the exact moment, but it is like this moment when I started changing the way I thought. And so instead of, and this has been shared a bit before, but instead of like labeling everything and seeing, like, for example, positive and negative, what if you can see it as a battery and there's just a plus and a minus side, right? So there's not this whole extra layer of the emotions that I feel or felt, and also about what I think or what I do. And this for sure is not always working because we're still human, but it helps um, to have more compassion, or at least it helps me to have more compassion towards myself, and also in the things I have less judgment, and that helps me to also celebrate the smaller wins, and to don't see my healing journey as something that's somewhere far away and that is difficult to reach, but to be able to celebrate like the smaller things, and when something changes or when I make a different choice or a different decision, that's already the healing part. And that can be something small as take a walk in nature because I'm longing for it, or saying no to an appointment, or whatever. It can be something really small, and then it starts with the smaller things, and then at some point I started to realize that I also apply it on the more bigger things, and on the negative emotions, let's say, or whatever. Yeah.
I like that. Um, I like how how you talk about non-judgmentness, because um, that does help you to be less stressed in life or less phased about whatever can happen in life. Let's say you missed the bus, and then you're like, shit, I missed the bus. This is a bad, like, whoa, like you could be a big thing. Or let's say you missed the plane, like, okay. But then you find out that for a specific reason you weren't supposed to be on that plane, or the plane that you took after that, you sat next to a great person that becomes a great friend later on in life. So if you don't judge things immediately and let your mind respond to it too quickly, then if you can take a moment to breathe, just let it in. And of course we are human, so we have opinions about it, but in the end, we all have our own nature. I'm quite chill. That's my nature. But I think
For you.
Yeah. For some people, it even if you're overthinker, even just a little bit less can help. You know, or maybe sometimes I need to actually catch that plane. You know, that's better for me. But hurry up a little. But yeah, I like it.
I like these questions from the public or from the.
I have a question. So I heard you speak about connecting to different. You were talking about different traditions. I'm curious to know. Most of you grew up here, right, in the diaspora, and you found ways to connect with ancestral knowledge and wisdom that was either taken away or hidden or not, either purposely or not purposely, not shared with us in the diaspora. I'm curious because I know a lot of people are trying to connect with that part of themselves. How did that journey start for you guys, and how, or and all the other people? Where did that journey start, and how did you find resources? Where did you look for these wisdoms, and how do you practice them?
Okay, yeah, I will try to start off. Okay, where did it all start? I mean, I think growing up in many different communities, first of all, and still being connected with the communities I grew up in, also, of course, transformed, never it just stayed fixated, but kind of respectfully being in this process of constant exchange. You know, there is things that we've already automatically been doing. I mean, you're cooking together, you're exchanging herbs and spices, but you're also exchanging knowledge about how to heal yourself in certain ways, even if it's the most simple things, such as like, oh, maybe you should use chamomile to just steam yourself when you have a cold. You know, like these kind of things. And my grandmother told this to my nanny, actually, just say nanny, my mother's mother. My nanny told this to me, but also my Moroccan friends told me this when I was younger. So that's a way of understanding already at a very young age that ancestral knowledge, that I consider ancestral knowledge belonging to a lineage, also is existing elsewhere. And that I think opened up a space for me to not be very rigid in life about no, this practice only belongs to me and only to us. It again, as I said, there is knowledge, a lot of knowledge that just is housing inside of this big, huge ass world, everywhere, but also inside of our bodies. So a lot of these things, of course, I went on to a specific journey of my own, and for example, the particular dances that I already used to do when I was young with my friends, who are often also Muslim, I started to connect more with people later on in my life that I did not necessarily grow up with, but that also grew up with those practices, but then have also started to place it into a kind of movement research context. So particularly Gnawa and Zar and whirling, they are traditions that these people then have started to transform, I would say, within that would be meaningful within this everyday reality and this context. And at this point in my life, I'm also, since I'm still connected with these communities and these people, and thankfully my friends are still seeing me as also for the person that I am, there is this moment of also me connecting them with that particular knowledge that I've gained coming from their traditions. People like also want to just shout out some names: Khalid Ben Gharib, Saida Naid Bouda, living in Paris, Morocco, from Algerian Moroccan descent, and inviting them, taking them with me to workshops. But also when I go with them into the spaces where we would find each other, where we would usually exchange this knowledge in our living rooms, just dancing, putting on some music, inviting an instrument into the space, that's the moment where I also start giving back. But even opening up that conversation as well. It's not just happening organically. I think a lot of this happens organically, but a lot of it is, I mean, a part of it now is also just actively having conversations about it. What does that mean? In a world where we should definitely have conversations about cultural appropriation, and in a world where actually I think many of us are deeply traumatized by the fact that people are stealing our cultures and are appropriating our cultures and traditions and practices without acknowledging them. This example that I'm giving then becomes a very, I think, beautiful reminder that exchange has always been there. Stealing is a very particular way, and that's not exchange. And you can feel when that happens. You know, the space gets tensed. People start asking questions that become more painful than actually verbindend, connected. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, and of course, I have many other stories, but I think this is one particular story that I wanted to share now. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I like this question as well. Um, okay. So I've always been interested in like whilst I started my journey of training and doing yoga and these things, I also was inspired or pushed by my teachers to also investigate different topics from different corners of the world. Um, but I personally always had yeah, an interest for Africa itself, um, and just stories about Africa from Africans, and also when it comes to healing. Um, and I did most of my research online through YouTube and yeah, some books, but most of it YouTube. And you have to do a lot of digging, but there's a lot of gems out there if you get into a certain track. And what I liked to find, one thing that I really enjoyed is that there is apparently, because I'm practicing yoga, but there's apparently a great connection between the practices of India and Africa. You could say Kemet, or even the rest of southern Africa. And I guess, you know, movement and understanding how the energy flows in the body. This is something that happens throughout all of society. Yoga is just very popular, but in South America it was done as well, and also in Africa we did it, and we had, maybe we didn't write down all these books because a lot was lost or a lot was hidden, and but these stories are still out there, and it's for me it was very healing to hear about stories about, for instance, the Kundalini, which is an energy they speak of in yoga that rises up and down your spine. And in Africa, apparently, they also knew about this, and they call it in India they call it the snake. In Africa, they call it the worm. But it's about the energy and about the thing itself. But it is nice to hear it from a perspective that I didn't hear about it from, yeah, didn't hear from yet. Um, Yeah, and I was taught by a Surinamese trainer as well, and he taught it in a way that I also think that things were taught back in Africa. We weren't set down. Okay, maybe Egypt later on there were a lot of students who were studying books, but the knowledge that I now I'm finding is also being passed through orally. So it was a lot of sitting and listening and talking and cooking together. And while you're cooking, you're learning how to cook, but also hearing stories and understanding how these things work. And I think that's a very, very African way of doing things. And maybe not even African. I think all cultures, they have it, but Western culture, even if you look at Western culture in Africa right now, it sometimes takes away the depth of connection and of passing through information. It becomes more cranial instead of hard. And I'm happy that I got it taught in that way. In the right now, yoga is like a traditional, popular thing. You can go to India, you go for 2 weeks, and you come back. You're a yoga teacher, but um, I really, put a lot of time into it, and it was really a devotion. And I think that's also traditionally a way of showing that you're actually interested in it. You just said you don't allow your students to come if they didn't do their homework. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But it's good to also have that. So yeah.
I think somebody in the back had a microphone ready or here.
Thank you. So you've been talking a lot about how this healing is important for people in general and for communities and society. And I'm wondering how specifically it's important, in your opinion, for the art world, art workers, but also being channeled through art. Because now we've been talking a lot also about therapy and coaching and working with people, but how does it function as an artistic form? If maybe it's put in a weird way, but sorry.
Yeah, go. Oh, you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot.
Wait, again, can you phrase it one more time? Simple for just one sentence and then.
So, how does it relate to art? So both, how does healing become an art form, but also how is it relevant for art workers, maybe for their also for their self-care,
Yeah.
maybe, or in other ways, or the art world more generally, because you also refer to this how in Western art it's so focused on the visual, etc.
For the specific form, I wouldn't really know, but I definitely the work art, the sort of art that really inspires me are often conceptual works. But to give, for example, an example is that people have written, and this is also a theory, but the practice of unlearning, for example. We have taught about how, for example, does a journey look like? What is, for example, success? How do we have an idea of what is success, for example, and then we measure ourselves. That we give value to that. So if we become famous, if our works get so much likes, then we that's in general that I think right now is how we measure, for example, success. And then there are, for example, artists who and it's more in the performance form that you can see that kind of work is the practice of unlearning and learning things, and where they use habits. For example, there is I think it's also in Amsterdam. I don't know the specific name, but they were an company, and then the team, for example, they did certain meetings every Monday, and then they did cleaning together, and every day they had to start with doing chores, and they reflect on that, and it was kind of boring, and it was like, oh, we have to do it because we have to do it. But later on, after a while, it's also kind of like, oh, it's binding us, and it's also kind of relearning the idea of unpaid labor. Why pay somebody to clean the office? Well, we can do that together as a group. And it's not as simple to like, oh, we give it and then a miracle would happen, but it's the practice of, let's do something, let's start with a certain ritual, let's start with a certain habit that is really unfamiliar, but if we commit to it together, then let's see what happens. Are we able to transform something? Are we able to make change? And then it becomes a space of experiencing, and also to step a little bit outside of your own role and expectations, and just go into the state of doing. So this is for me personally how I always see a connection with healing and art is that if for example I want to be committed to something, then to do that kind of commitment, for example, within the realm of art is more exciting for me than the commitment of going to the gym every day for a certain amount to work on my body. You know, I'm triggered in that way more than in another way. But I do see then how healing comes. And it's those kind of stories that for me are really interesting and really inspiring, both artistically, but also really personally on a personal level.
For me personally, my art is my healing and my healing is my art. And but then like the last project I created together with my sister, we really went deep with the dancers. So we really asked them to go into their emotions, go into the pain, go into the pleasure. It has been shown a bit here before, but in a healthy way. And I think for me personally, it's needed to do that in a healthy place and also being able to hold what's coming up for them. So in that sense, for me, it's important to heal in the art world or to heal in my practices, as I am also able to support my dancers in that point to move through something and then show that and show it over and over again if there are multiple performances. So is that clear? I lost my thoughts. Yeah, it's supporting and it's healing through the process and through the whole repetition and the rehearsal period, I guess, and being able to hold them and allowing them to go there, but then in a healthy and safe space. And I think when I'm just asking them to go there, but not being able to, when something comes up or something arises, not being able to hold them, then it's becoming dangerous and toxic. So I guess in that sense, for me, it's important to have the healing aspect in my practice.
Yeah,
I would
there are
actually.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, can I?
Because I think there are a few questions, so definitely like finish your answer.
Yeah.
But I already saw two hands and another hand popping up. Here,
Great,
so
lovely. I will try to keep it short, but I'm gonna go political again. I think art, spirituality, and culture have been separated by the colonial project, first of all, and therefore also healing from it. And we live in this world where we constantly have to create or reproduce certain hierarchies, right? So you can only become a healer in this reality when you have an education in something, and then you get fun, like then you can get through your healthcare system can get covered only to go to this and this and that person. I think these kind of hierarchies are very destructive to who we actually are as humans. So first of all, I really think that, and if you specifically then look at it from an art perspective or from the discipline in the world of art, since it has become separated, it's reshaping that. So I would definitely recommend people to stop thinking in these kind of hierarchies and think that when you're an artist who has a degree or has a certain portfolio that you have more rights to even say something. And of course, I have to be critical even about us sitting here. I think we are actively expressing ourselves, and I think it's beautiful what we are all doing. But in that sense, there are so many people out there who are actually doing really the work, but are not manifesting themselves or expressing themselves through this language, but are already doing art and healing, right? It's really in our everyday life. And that's also where I personally come from. If I had to start acknowledging that the neighborhood where I grew up in, the family where I grew up in, no, a lot of them would not consider themselves as artists or as healers. But if I start looking deeper into it from where I'm at right now, I start to understand, oh yes, they actually have always been, right? It's this, even in these conversations, often people start describing themselves. So yeah, but I am an artist now, but I don't come necessarily from a family of artists, you know, and this, I also used to say that. I'm not doing that anymore. I think that's nonsense. So yeah.
yeah, just a practical announcement. Someone just whispered that we're already running late, but because we saw a few hands, I still want to get to those. So please keep your question brief. And for the panelists, I love how you're expanding, but also keep your answers a bit brief. And we can continue the conversation downstairs in a bit.
So I actually don't have a question, but coming back to your question about like community and movement. So I join a yoga class every month by a great teacher. He's also in the panel. And and what I like about this class is that it's for free and it's meant for undocumented people, but everyone can join. And I used to go sometimes to yoga classes where I felt very intimidated by the teacher, by everyone who has the right outfits and the right poses and seems to do everything much better than I do. And in this class, it's so many people from different backgrounds that, and it's fun, it's light, and sometimes people don't even join. They just sit because they don't want to or they don't dare to. And I think that's so inspiring because they're there. Nobody told them to show up. They came and they do whatever they can, which is at that point just be there. And I think that's so inspiring, and also the way that the teacher does that to allow that to happen. And I think that's very beautiful because it's not what the rules are, but to make space, and give people time. I think that's very beautiful and community-minded, and it's just in the center of Amsterdam. So I just wanted to share that as an example also.
Cool, yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a question about how are plants, frogs, and all these ceremonies incorporated, and what is the importance to healing? Because our ancestors used to do that a lot. So it kind of feels like society nowadays is kind of more awakened to the importance of using plants into the healing process and connecting more to our higher self, to our ancestors. And I want to know your thoughts about how that plays a role, or is it just yoga and dancing enough for you to get connected and healed?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, you said plants and frogs and what? That was funny. No, I know what you're talking about. For other people who don't know what she's talking about, okay, everybody knows. So, yeah, I think right now it's very popular. I'm reading a book now by an African shaman. He's called Credo Mutwa Zulu shaman, and he is sharing about the things that he learned as a Zulu shaman and how much work comes into being able to see and do the things that he can do and see. We can see, oh, you're sick there and there. Your grandmother wants to tell you this and that. You need to walk every day or whatever. But he's not taking something and then getting the information and then telling you. No, he's done a lot of work to open those channels, basically. And it is true that those people who have done that work, they can sometimes use that to basically break open, the top of your head and just allow a lot of information to come in. And those things that stick, they can then help you to explain, or maybe you even understand it a little bit better. But this is a very radical thing to do, and it can bring radical change. But I believe that the real substantial changes come from day by day practice. If you really want to speak to your grandmother or see the universe, you can actually go inside yourself, make the room dark, do calm breathing, and step into that trance state. But it takes practice, and then you are with the stars. And I'm not saying that I'm that efficient in that. I can see and feel other things, but I do think it's a little bit hyped. I don't want to say that it's that you shouldn't do it. I've tried it, and so I speak from experience. I think it's hyped, but I've also heard people speak of the great benefits that it gave them. So, with that being said, proceed with caution, I would say.
Yeah. Plants, all plants have spiritual power. So tap into all plants. Don't only think about plants that you can consume and take in your quick fix and then buy, like you said. So yes, and of course, let's be respectful still also of the painful migration histories of many plants into the land where we live now, like a lot of us also have. I think in the same way that we're trying to be mindful of our pains that we carry with us in this reality, and also a lot of resilience, plants also carry that with them. So the way in which we use them here changes, but how? I think it's just a question back. Of course, yes, spiritual powers to plants. I'm doing a whole ass research on it right now. So exchanging a lot of knowledge with people. Yes, yes, yes. I'm also thinking about you and actually how you're using your creams. I actually wanted to ask this before. Like maybe you can share a bit about that. Because the creams and the like that you make as well, like they have a lot of natural substances, plants,
Yes.
spiritual plant power, healing, body.
I also have a natural skincare line, toxin free. Um, and I totally agree with what you both shared. I think it can have like great benefits, and I also did it and experienced it, and it gave me a lot. But also, it's not a quick fix, and I think, especially as it's hyped now, there's not always the aftercare that's needed, I feel, and a lot of trauma and triggers can arise. And if it's just hi, bye, you have to deal with it yourself, and that's, I think, not always as healthy as it should be. But again, I also know that it can have great benefits. But I think it's very important to take in mind where you do it, how you do it, and where it's coming from, and the intentions behind. And then connecting to what you just asked, nature has it all, and it can heal us. I mean, walking outside can already have like great benefits, and I think we all experience that. And I'm using more European plants and or essential oils in my products because it's more here, which I feel is more healthy for the environment. Anyways, it all, like even rosemary, I mean, it helps the blood circulation, so that's in our body cream, for example. So there's also a lot already here, right? So sometimes it's also maybe honoring what we have here and use that, and not saying that we can't use what's abroad, because I also do that. But I think it's all about balance.
Yeah, I have a question. I want to keep it very short and simple, but I'm not sure if I can. You talked about healers and people not having the label of healers, but they're still healers. One question for everyone. Are all artists healers, or are our healers artists? Because I want to make sure that we are talking the same language here.
I can keep it very short. I think we are all healers. We just are sometimes blocked and don't know how or don't remember how, but I think we can all heal.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we all agree?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, that's good.
Go, please.
It depends on what you see as like healing. I think healing is something specific. I guess if we would go into that word, whoa. I mean, I don't know if I could define it, but some art, I don't think it's necessarily heals you. It can, but not necessarily, or it might not be the intention of the artist. But yeah, a tree is a piece of art, you could say, and to one person, they look at it, yeah, it heals them. So I don't know. It's a difficult question. If I see like a abstract piece of art and then I look at it, maybe it allows me to think about things in a different way or try to see something into that. But it feels more like a mental thing than more an energetic. Yeah, I think it's a difficult question.
if I also feel you, I think there the for me the nuance is again in the spirit in between, right? Everyone is a healer, but I cannot necessarily heal everyone, or I cannot even activate in everyone healing capacities. It's very specific. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Of course, it's in the person, but again, it's in the relationship between you and that moment, also and the music. Because a certain music will activate certain spirits within certain people, but it will certain people get not any activation at all. You know, yeah, it's just it's again it's this spirit in between for me.
I don't think necessarily. Yeah.
The coincidence of, the right time. Oh, sometimes it's like the right time, the right moment. Yeah, that's my brief answer.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
One more question.
Thank you. Was there a final question here? I saw a hand earlier.
Hey, my name is Sam. I came a little bit later on. But I had a question because I find it a very fascinating subject and very inspiring. But a very simple question. When you express yourself through dancing, for example, what do you mean? What are you healing from? Are you healing from your past trauma injuries? You mentioned something about stress, right? Stress is a day-to-day, activity that happens as a symptom. It's a phenomenon that happens every day, right? There is stress, but it really depends how you deal with stress on a daily basis, right? Because some people know how to manage stress, but if you're disorganized, you don't know how to deal with stress. So what happens? You overstress on a day, right? So it's really your capacity, and how you deal with stress on a daily basis in order to, maintain a healthy lifestyle. Do you see dancing as a way of, as a coping mechanism, or the way you express your, explore your body, doing your arts basically? Is that a coping mechanism for you to deal with stress, or is it? Can you give an example? What are you specifically healing from?
I don't think this has a short answer, but I will, I will try to keep it short. I feel your question has multiple aspects, and I'll try to tap into it briefly. So first, stress. Stress doesn't have to be negative. I think there's also a healthy way of stress. Just want to tap into that real quickly. I don't think dance for me is a coping mechanism. I think it really allows me to heal. And this can be anything, I guess. It really depends on how I tap into my body and in my emotions and how I'm able to allow that to move through me. And this, of course, isn't always possible. Sometimes I'm going with an intention and then it's not working out. That's also life. But I feel like when I'm truly able to tap into a certain emotion, I can, with the right intention, with the right energy, with the right music, I'm able to heal that in very short nutshell.
Yeah, and for me, dancing is definitely partially a coping mechanism. Sometimes I just need to twerk for a few minutes to deal with some shit that is going through me. And it's not necessarily healing in that moment, but I need to do that. But there's also, of course, this intentional space of when I when I dance in, especially more in the studio space or whatever. I create particular ceremonies for myself or with others. I invite them in a very similar way as we did. I don't know, you were not there in the opening, but in a very similar way as we did in the opening, starting by writing. Start with words. Words are so present in our everyday lives. Express yourself first, and then from there, I have an intentional space to actually start dancing and moving. I would even do that sometimes for myself when I go to a club. I love dancing on Amapiano, for example, and I love doing that, especially before I go to Amapiano parties. I just write a little thing to my ancestors. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I want to confront, and then I just go. Yeah, and if I necessarily heal, of course, not after one session always. This is for me, it's an infinite process, an infinite journey.
Yes, thank you. It's, we can go on and on. I already can hear this, but we do have to wrap it up. It is time. to close the event. Of course, we'll go downstairs for those who still want to. We're still present to ask questions. A small shout out again, of course, to Afrispectives to organize this. Make sure to, give us feedback as well on how the event went. And yeah, stay tuned for more. You can scan with the QR scan if you want to follow Afrispectives. And yeah, I want to again thank you all for joining us. It has been experimental all for us as well to do it in this kind of platform. And just again, thank you all for listening here and being here and yeah, giving us the time and space.